homes, there were long conversations. There were packed debates in the smallest village halls and the largest TV studios. People were engaged about the future of our country. And friends, that's exactly how politics should be. That is what an empowered nation looks like. I remember well how I spent polling day. It was the frantic dash from door to door to ensure that everyone that we needed to vote was going out to do so. But that frantic effort, so much the hallmark of polling day through the ages, didn't really feel necessary that day. People were coming out to vote in their droves. The turnout across Scotland spoke for itself. 85% of eligible voters took part. No other vote in recent memory has come close to matching that. For all of us who worked so hard for a yes vote, the excitement of the campaign turned to heartbreak as the declarations started pouring in. I remember seeing the boxes being opened in Perth and knowing quite quickly that we were not going to win at that count. But as the night wore on, it became clear that we were not going to make it across Scotland. I remember travelling to Edinburgh in the dead of night, and not a word was shared in the car the whole journey to Edinburgh. As dawn broke, I was back in front of the cameras talking about Scotland's future. As Parliament returned, I spoke to many leading figures in the No campaign. They were gracious and they were understanding that lifelong independence campaigners like me were truly hurting at that moment. If the result had gone the other way, I know I would have shown the same courtesy that they extended to me. But when I think about those days after the referendum, I'll tell you what else I remember. It was how quickly people in the Yes campaign picked themselves up, dusted themselves down, and looked to the future with renewed determination. Many of the grassroots campaign groups didn't melt away. They stuck together and they continued working in and for their communities. New friendships had been forged and a new sense of possibility planted in the minds of thousands of people. That sense of empowerment resonates to this day. And that's why, even though I was devastated by the result, I'm in no doubt that Scotland's independence referendum has left an overwhelmingly positive legacy on our country, and we, the Scottish National Party, should be incredibly proud that together we made that happen. Friends, 10 years on, where stands Scotland today? After the referendum, new powers came to our Parliament and new institutions that are needed in an independent country, were created. What does that mean? It means a Scottish child payment helping to keep 100,000 children in Scotland out of poverty. It means a social security system with fairness and compassion at its heart, a world away from the DWP's often shameful assessment processes. It means a more progressive income tax system unlocking £1.5 billion of extra investment in public services like our National Health Service. It means a Scottish National Investment Bank unlocking Scotland's net zero future. ScotRail taken into public hands. 16 and 17-year-olds now have the right to vote in Scottish elections. These are all the positive legacies of Scotland's independence referendum. Friends, what is the lesson here? I'll tell you what the lesson is. Constitutional change delivers real change in our country. That's the lesson of 2014. That's Scotland's legacy in the last 10 years. We have delivered change for people in Scotland because this country demanded more power and more responsibility for the people of our country. And what's Westminster's? Well, we were promised that voting no would mean we stay in the European Union. Instead, we were forced to be an unwilling passenger on Boris's Brexit bus. We were promised that voting no would mean a partnership of equals. But instead, our Parliament has had its powers weakened and undermined. We were promised that voting no would mean economic strength and stability. Well, where on earth do I start with that one? We may laugh, but it's no laughing matter, because our mortgages, our food prices, our energy bills, three specific costs that it was suggested would rise with independence, are all now more expensive as a result of Westminster decisions. The contrast over the last 10 years could not be clearer. Decisions in Scotland making Scotland fairer. Decisions taken at Westminster holding Scotland back, and that is why Scotland must become an independent country. But friends, much as we were all invigorated by the 2014 campaign, we cannot live in the past. Today, we must look to the future. We've had a long, dark decade, a decade of austerity, of Brexit, of a cost of living crisis and a global pandemic. As a nation, we can't just regret the things that we cannot do. It's time for us to start focusing again on the things that we can. And that is exactly what we are going to do. We want the people of Scotland to be bold and ambitious about our country's future, and we must lead by example. Yesterday, we announced the Scottish Government's support for Glasgow to host the Commonwealth Games in 2026. As you might expect, I made sure we looked at this proposal closely. Money's tight, and like all big projects, there are risks. It will not be on the same scale as 2014, and we don't have nearly as long to prepare. But friends, let's remember why Glasgow has been asked to step in and rescue the Commonwealth Games. Scotland has a fantastic reputation for hosting international events, and in Glasgow, we have a truly world-class city to do so. That is what others around the world see when they look to our shores. So, my friends, perhaps it is time for us to see ourselves as others see us. Friends, as we look towards 2026 and beyond, let us set our sights on the progressive, compassionate and ambitious country that we all want to see. A Scotland of free education, where ability matters more than money. A Scotland powered by our own renewable green energy, where communities benefit from their own natural resources. A Scotland free of child poverty. A Scotland of bairns not bombs, where Trident is consigned to the dustbin of history. To make that a reality, we will build on the game-changing investments like the Scottish Child Payment that we are delivering right now. And we'll make the case for all welfare decisions to be made here in Scotland. And make no mistake, we will use those powers. If Keir Starmer and Labour won't abolish the two-child cap, give us the powers and the SNP will. Scotland faces real choices as we face the future. The SNP will build on our record of free education for all. In contrast, Labour have introduced tuition fees everywhere else in the UK. Does anyone seriously believe that they won't do exactly the same if they get the chance here in Scotland? For 10 long years, Labour told us we didn't need independence. All we need to do is get rid of the Tories. Well, it's taken Keir Starmer less than 10 weeks to completely demolish that argument. Labour promised no more austerity, but instead they're going to intensify it. Labour promised to protect pensioners, but instead they've robbed them of their winter fuel payment. And they promised everyone they would cut their energy bills. Instead, they are set to rise by an average of £150. The problem for Scotland is not just an incredibly damaging Westminster Tory government. We now have an incredibly damaging Westminster Labour government, and there is a pattern here. The problem for Scotland is government from Westminster. The SNP's job is to get on with setting out the better alternative. People in Scotland want to be empowered and inspired, and it is up to us to do that. During 2014, the yes vote soared because people were out there talking to each other about what our future could look like. Today, in 2024, we must reawaken that sense of hope, of optimism and of possibility that was so prevalent 10 years ago. It is time for us to talk to each other again. And when I say each other, I mean to talk to everyone in Scotland. We have a duty to lift heads and to look towards the horizon and a better Scotland. All around us, there are independent countries just like Scotland who are more successful than the UK. Ireland, talking about extending their winter fuel payment, not cutting it. Iceland, one of the lowest poverty rates in the developed world. Norway, providing parents with far more generous parental leave than in the UK. I could go on and on. We must stop asking why it is that countries around us are all so successful and instead ask a simple question: why not decide for ourselves on the kind of country we want to live in? Why suffer the insult and the injury of Brexit? Instead, we could be sitting at the top table in Brussels as an independent nation. Why suffer the economic damage of a hostile immigration policy? Instead, we can welcome the people that we need to grow our economy, to sustain our public services and to enrich our society. Why suffer the damage of living under a failed Westminster economic model? Instead, we can build a new economy with solidarity and sustainability at its heart. Why suffer fuel poverty in a land of fuel plenty? Instead, we can harness the abundance of energy all around us to deliver a cleaner future and a green industrial revolution for absolutely everyone living here in Scotland. When you think about each of these decisions, you're left in no doubt that we here in Scotland could be taking better decisions than Westminster. Our job is to make independence relevant to the everyday concerns of every citizen in Scotland. That the powers of independence can help us grow our economy in a way that works for everyone, to make our public services the best they can be, and give the next generation the best possible start in life. That is the future I want for our country. I committed to demonstrating that independence is the solution to the immediate concerns of people in Scotland on the NHS, schools, the cost of living, on energy prices. That's the way SNP campaigning will persuade more people in Scotland of the merits of independence. That is how we will win Scotland's independence. Friends, when we leave here today, let us do so remembering what brought us all together in the first place. It was that sense of empowerment and excitement about our future. On September the 18th, 2014, we glimpsed what it was like to hold our destiny in our hands. Countries that are independent have that opportunity every single day. Every single day is a day of possibility. So 10 years on from the referendum, let us today make a promise to ourselves. If I may, let us make a vow. A vow that whatever else happens, we will face the future together with hope and with optimism. Let us talk ourselves up and never allow ourselves to be talked down. Let us pass on that sense of hope to our fellow Scots through the hands of solidarity and friendship. Let us inspire them with a vision of what is possible. Let us build up the confidence and the belief of our nation, and let us invite them to join us on the journey to a better future, a future which is ours to decide, and a success for Scotland which is ours to share. Thank you very much. We're going to take a few questions from the media, and we'll hear all these questions and all these answers without interruption. So, now I've got a list here somewhere. I do. Right. First of all, Lindsay Buse from the BBC. Lindsay.
First Minister, thank you very much. Are you any closer now to your goal of an independent Scotland than you were 10 years ago in 2014? Or is that aim, do you think, actually now further away?
I think we are closer, Lindsay, because we've, as a result of the referendum, we were able to secure more powers, which gave us more scope to act on tax and welfare issues and a variety of other questions that I recounted in my speech. And as a consequence, we have made a difference in the lives of people in Scotland. So people can see, as a consequence of the pressure to get more powers here in Scotland, we've added to the achievements and the strengths that we've already put in place. So people can see the positive impact of decisions being taken here in Scotland. And the challenge for those of us who believe that Scotland should be an independent country is that we've got to extend that onto other issues which are on the minds and the priorities of people in Scotland. So when people think about the challenges that we face in our public services or the need to pursue greater economic opportunities, they see independence as the pathway to doing that. And I believe that's why people will be persuaded by the arguments for independence, and I think we're closer to achieving that than we were in 2014. Conor Gillis.
First Minister, just picking up on what Lindsay asked you there, you and your predecessors have continued to say, particularly during the election campaign, that you think there will be another referendum in the next 3 to 5 years. The reality is, though, that you were hammered at the recent election, where you put independence front and centre there. Would you not be more likely to win back some of the supporters that you've lost if you just said, and were upfront about the fact that independence is off the table?
I think people want. I think. Well, wait, folks. Is this it's a question from a journalist, which I take these questions seriously and answer them seriously. I think people want honesty and clarity in politics. They want people to set out what they believe in. And I believe in Scottish independence. I've believed in it all my adult life. I've never been more convinced that Scotland needs independence more than today, when I look at the fact that we've had a change of government in the United Kingdom, which was apparently going to solve all the difficulties, and we've got hundreds of thousands of pensioners in our country are going to be experiencing fuel poverty this winter because Westminster has taken away a winter fuel payment, a decision out with our hands. Now that, to me, is the hard reality of Westminster control, and that's why these issues matter, and that's why we should put them to the people of Scotland in the way that we do. Peter McMahon.
First Minister, 10 years ago, people in the south of Scotland voted decisively against independence, 2/3, 1/3 roughly. At the last election, you didn't win any seats in the south of Scotland, in Dumfries and Galloway or in the Scottish borders. When we speak to people in the south of Scotland, most of them, not all of them, but most of them will tell us they would like you and your government to get on with improving the health service, improving education, improving the roads. Do you not think it would be better from your point of view, not giving up on independence, but to demonstrate you can do those things before you begin talking about independence again?
Well, I think it's important that we get on with the day-to-day work of government, Peter. Of course I do. That's what occupies a vast amount of my time, and my team, many of my team are here today, but most of the other time they're concentrating on all of these very important issues, because it's vital that we deliver for the people of Scotland on the priorities and the issues that matter to them. But there will be challenges in doing that because of, for example, the fiscal environment and framework that we operate in today. That is a framework essentially determined by the Westminster government, and as you know from having had to spend far too much time in my company during the election campaign, I was railing against that fiscal framework, and the issues are just as important today. So my message to voters in the south of Scotland is that I accept the importance of addressing the day-to-day issues that people are concerned about, and I attach the highest priority to resolving those questions. But I also have to point out that we would be able to do more and achieve more for people if we were able to take the broader range of decisions that determine the future of our country and the choices that we can make. And that's why independence is such a vital issue to be part of our political debate. James Cook from the BBC. James.
Good morning, First Minister. Nicola Sturgeon told my colleague Glenn Campbell this week that she thinks Irish reunification, and I quote, will happen as part of what she called a wider shake-up of UK governance that will include Scotland becoming independent. Do you agree that Irish reunification and Scottish independence will go hand in hand?
To be fair, I don't actually think that's what Nicola Sturgeon was saying in the going hand in hand. But do I think they'll both happen? Yes, I do. So I agree with that point very much so. I think the tide and the pattern of those debates is moving decisively and emphatically in that direction. Gina Davidson from Global. Gina.
Morning, First Minister. A lot of rhetoric in what you've said today. I'm sure people in this room who supported independence in 2014 were delighted to hear it, but no solution as to how you're going to achieve that. A referendum is still the gold standard. Is that where your view still lies? And how are you going to convince a UK government to ever get round the table to talk about that? You're going to have to win big in 2026, aren't you?
The thing is, Gina, I think the only way we'll win independence is by boosting support for the concept of independence. And that's why I've set my party in the direction of making sure that the arguments, the points, some of the points that Peter was putting to me there about the everyday concerns of people, are that independence is seen as a solution to some of these challenges. And that's the job of what we've got to do, to translate independence into an everyday concept that provides a solution to the challenges and also delivers a route to fulfil the opportunities of people in Scotland. That's exactly what we are going to do to make that case, and we've got to make that case to command more support within Scotland. But there's a fundamental democratic point here, Gina, which was recognised, to be fair, by the Cameron government in 2012, that people in Scotland wanted to determine their own future. Opinion polling demonstrates that people believe we should be able to demonstrate our own future, and the United Kingdom government cannot turn its back on the democratic wishes of the people of Scotland. But our job, my job, as leader of the SNP, the job of my supporters, is to reach out beyond those who are already convinced by independence and to talk to them, engage with them, discuss, build their confidence. You've heard from Sarah a second ago, who made a journey from a no position to a yes position. I know plenty of people who've done exactly that, and we need to reach more people to persuade them of the merits and the value of independence. Lucinda Cameron from PA. Lucinda. Oh, sorry.
Do you accept there's no prospect of another referendum taking place anytime soon?
Well, I think there'll be, I think what we've got to do, our priority, is to build support for independence and to make that palpable and demonstrable in Scotland. And to do that, I'm going to point my party in the direction of ensuring that we translate independence into an approach, a route to prosperity and opportunity and security for people in Scotland, so they can see independence as the solution to their challenges. And when we boost support for independence, we will be able to deliver independence. Alistair Ferguson from The National. Alistair.
Thank you, First Minister. You said previously you're optimistic about young Scots supporting the independence movement. You said that number is about 600,000 who are now eligible to vote who couldn't 10 years ago. You say that number is about to rise to 1 million in 2030. My question to you, though, is a referendum in the next 5 years too soon?
Well, I think what we've got to do is we've got to get on with winning that argument, Alistair, to make sure that we reach people in Scotland. I think all the demonstrable evidence is that that young people are much more emphatic in their support for independence than other age groups. I think that demonstrates that focus on hope, on optimism, on the possibility of Scotland. And as a consequence of that, we have to provide the means and the opportunity for that argument to prevail. So I think we've got to get out there, Alistair. We've got to engage positively with people in Scotland. persuade them, build their confidence in the arguments for independence, and make sure that we have the means to deliver that independence. And that's what will be at the heart of SNP campaigning. Tom Gordon, Daily Mail. Tom.
Hi there, First Minister. In her 10-year comments, Nicola Sturgeon said she had come up against a brick wall of Westminster denial and she had been unable to overcome it. What is your mechanism for translating popular support for independence, if you manage to achieve that? What's your mechanism for translating that into independence itself? Because I didn't hear anything particularly new in that speech. I didn't hear some sort of game-changing approach. It just seemed to be, let's build support for independence, which is a constant of the Yes movement. It's not anything new.
Well, what we've got to do, Tom, is we have quite simply got to build support for independence so it becomes a compelling and demonstrable proposition within Scotland. That is what we have got to do. There is no shortcut. And hear me when I say that. I accept there's no shortcut to independence other than the hard yards of persuading people of the merits of independence, boosting their confidence in the arguments and ensuring that is clear and visible and demonstrable within our country. And on the basis of that, a Westminster government that denies the democratic choices of the people of Scotland, which have been acknowledged constantly as being the right of people of Scotland to determine their own future, will be an unsustainable position for the Westminster government to play. But fundamentally, the job is ours to build confidence in independence and to ensure that support is able to be effective in delivering independence when sufficient people in Scotland are convinced of its merits. Kieran Andrews.
Thank you, First Minister. You're talking there about building support for independence rather than parliamentary elections a lot. I wonder if this is a throwback to 2015, where it was briefed quite widely that the trigger for pushing for a second referendum would be sustained support for independence around about the 60% mark. Is that the kind of game changer you're looking at rather than a parliamentary election? And if there's no pro-independence majority in 2026, does that mean a referendum comes off the table?
Well, I think there's a couple of imponderables in there, Kieran, but obviously what's important, and I think what's been the thread through what I said to the party conference in late August, early September, what I've said today, is that I'm in the business of reaching out from the SNP to build support for independence. That's what I'm in the business of doing. I want to build public confidence in the arguments for independence, and we will never be able to win independence unless there is compelling and demonstrable evidence of the support in place for independence. So that's going to be at the heart of all that we do. Obviously, we've got an election to fight in 2026, but what we've also got to do, and what my message to my party conference was all about, and what I'm reinforcing today, is we've got to get out there and create the engagement in society that led to the yes vote soaring in 2014. If you go back to, for most of my adult life, prior to 2014, I don't think independence support had breached 30%. I don't think I may stand to be corrected, but I don't think I'd ever reached 30%. When people engaged on the issue, and when we engaged people, yes support soared to 45. And what I'm saying to my party is we have to get out there and we've got to engage and create that atmosphere of dialogue and possibility with the people of Scotland to enable us to win. And that's how we'll do it. Paul Hutchin. Paul.
When Nicola Sturgeon was First Minister, you were her loyal deputy, but in the hours after the general election result, she was on the television and she criticised your campaign. She said that independence wasn't really put front and centre and that the case for independence had to be based on substance, not just rhetoric. What's your response to these criticisms?
Well, what I would say is that the arguments for independence have got to be substantial. That's why we marshal the arguments and the points that we make. But I accept that we've got to reach more people and we've got to convince more people of the journey about the journey to independence. So my whole message, what I've been doing in the brief time I have been SNP leader, is creating the foundations to enable us to be that campaigning vehicle that engages with people and wins that argument. And that's what to all the, I don't know if everybody realises what lies ahead of you, but this is what lies ahead of you all, you know. We're all going to have to be out there doing exactly this, to reach out and to make that case. And what I pledged at my party conference, and this I suppose is the core of my answer to your question, Paul, what I pledged at my party conference is that I will make sure when people go to vote, when they express their preferences, they will see independence as the solution to the challenges and the issues that are on their minds in that election, whether it's the cost of living or the public services or whatever it happens to be. And that is when we will get the necessary priority around independence. Right, the last question is going to be from Conor Matchett. Conor.
Thanks, First Minister. Ruth Davidson, I think, told the BBC this morning that Nicola Sturgeon cost her opportunity to have a second referendum by going too hard, too fast, so early after the 2016 Brexit vote. You've talked about your own concerns about that strategy. Is Ruth Davidson right?
I think it's probably safe to say that these are words I will never utter, Conor. However, you know, I'm a famously generous person, but I don't really think you could honestly expect me to say that. Well, for fear that I've got to rub shoulders with most of these folk in the future, so that might not be the most popular answer I could ever give. Political leadership, as I am, despite my proximity to it for a long time, political leadership, as I'm finding out, is a place where you've got to make tons of critical decisions. And you make them on the best judgment you can at that particular moment. And they will be, and there's never a certainty about the decision that you make. You have to weigh things up and you have to agonise about these questions. And that's what all of us have to do in political leadership. And that's what I think was done in the aftermath of Brexit. But let's not underestimate the shock, the dismay that people in Scotland felt the morning after the Brexit referendum. Because people basically had their European citizenship and multiple opportunities taken away from them against their will when they had been promised the absolute opposite. So I don't think we should be surprised that big decisions were being taken because people felt so badly let down by a set of circumstances where our country was told, if you vote no, you'll be guaranteed your membership of the European Union, and the absolute opposite of that happened. So I think that's you got a very long answer to a very short question, which, as you'll have noticed, I didn't give you an answer to your very short part of your question. But then that will not be a surprise to you, Conor, either. Thank you all very much. I've got to appear in front of the conveners group at Parliament as part of my day job, Peter McMahon, at 12 o'clock. So if you'll forgive me, I'll go and do that. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here.